Well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Messiah Business Alumni Association and the Office of Alumni and Parent Relations, we would like to thank you for coming and welcome you here this morning. This is the 29th breakfast that the Messiah Business Alumni Association has hosted in its history, and this is by far our highest attendance to date, which I think is a wonderful testament to the speakers that are going to be sharing with us this morning, but also to each and every one of you who have invited a guest here, to our students, our faculty, our staff, and our administration. We just want to thank you all for being here this morning. We do have, I believe, over 50 new first-time guests with us, which is a wonderful thing. And so in light of that, we just wanted to share a little bit about what the Messiah Business Alumni Association actually is. Started in 2005, the purpose of the Alumni Business Association is to serve as a resource for current business students with members in a similar field of study, to act as an advocate for the management and business department, and to develop business relationships with individuals representing public, private, and non-for-profit organizations. These breakfasts are just one of the many ways that our Messiah Business Alumni Association does that, and we just want to say thank you to our steering committee for their work in putting on these events and other events as well. We would also like to recognize some of our special guests that have joined us this morning. President Kim Phipps is here, as well as the Interim Dean of the School of Business, Education, and Social Sciences, Dr. John Adelman, is with us. And then we also just want to thank all of the Messiah College faculty and staff and administration that have joined us today.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Danielle Harper, and I am a Quality Assurance Specialist with Giant Foods. I've been a part of the Giant family now for 5 years, and I have enjoyed every minute of my journey. The journey actually started quite some time ago, right down the road in Grantham at Messiah College, where I enjoyed all of my time there too. Most of it spent in the Georgian Science Center counting fruit flies endlessly, but that was a whole long time ago. So, as a very proud Messiah graduate and Giant representative, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. Not only to sponsor this wonderful women's networking event, but also to speak to you a little bit about Giant Foods. This year, Giant Foods is really excited to be celebrating our 90th anniversary. Back in 1923, our founder, David Javich, certainly did not envision the giant of a company that would grow from the humble beginnings of a two-man butcher shop known as the Carlisle Meat Market. Today, Giant has grown into one of the leading supermarket operations in the United States, and we currently operate almost 200 grocery stores in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. Although Giant has grown and come a long way from its modest starts in 1923, we have never lost our local connection to our customers or the dedication to our values. One of those key values is our associates, and it is those associates who are the driving force behind Giant and their long history of continued success. Giant's goal is to remain an employer of choice by offering a work environment based upon respect, an emphasis on personal excellence, and opportunities for career advancement. I'm so proud to be a part of a family-oriented culture that fosters a diverse environment and treats everyone with equality and dignity. One specific way that Giant helps foster an environment, inclusion, and opportunities for career advancements is through our women's group, Women Adding Value, or WAVE as we refer to it. WAVE's main focus is to be a partner in making Giant a better place to work, a better place to shop, and a better neighbor through its own key objectives of building talent, building community, and building business. As the chair of the WAVE group, I am very proud of WAVE's key signature event, which is a day-long developmental and networking women's conference, which targets over 400 plus female managers and leaders within the Giant family. This year is going to mark our 5th annual conference, and we are all super excited about bringing all of our female leadership together to celebrate all of our successes and embrace what the future has for us. The future will hold many new opportunities and some challenges. For some of us, those challenges started this morning. Mine was getting out of the house without my 3.5-year-old getting chocolate glazed donut on my pants. So, success.
Well done.
But those of us that continue to aspire for bigger and greater things can be assured that we are very fortunate to have role models such as our own Laura Williams, who's going to speak today, in our family to lead our way. Thank you, Laura, for the never-ending leadership and support of all those around you. Giant has been taking care of customers and associates and the community since 1923. Few businesses can endure this test of time. Whether creating a better place to shop for customers, serving as a great place to work, or being a good neighbor, Giant is proud of the 90 years of getting better every day. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your breakfast.
We've got 3 distinguished panelists with us this morning. First of all, I'm Connie Ostwald. I am a current faculty member in the Department of Management and Business at Messiah College, and I'm thrilled to see all my students here this morning. And I'm also thrilled that we have the group from Ahold here, and I just had a great breakfast learning about what they do for women in leadership. And so thank you for your sponsorship and just for your participation this morning. I'd like to introduce our panel members here. We've got Shari Franey, and Shari is the founder, president, and COO of the Code Smart Group. All the bios are in your program here. We've got Deb Pierson, and Deb left IBM to start her own company, PCCI. And she is both Deb and Shari are alumni of Messiah College. And then we have Laura Williams, who is the Senior Vice President and Deputy General Counsel for the Ahold Group, the parent company of all the Giant stores. So join me in welcoming these ladies, and we'll get started. First of all, we've got way too many questions here to ask in our short time allowed, but we're just going to kind of let it flow. These women have come to share their wisdom and their insights with us. Those of us that have been in business for many years have seen the role of women change over time. I know that I grew up in a household of brothers, many brothers, and I was taught that competition is the name of the game, and if you want to get anywhere, you've got to learn to compete in life. And then when I grew up and got out of my household, I saw that the playing field wasn't quite so level out there in the business world as it was at home with my brothers. And I had to learn a few things about cooperation, collaboration, what it means to be a woman in leadership in society. This is quite a hot topic, and evidence is that you're all here. And there's still a debate going on out there, whether women need to lean in more, which is the title of Sheryl Sandberg's new book, CEO of Facebook, coming out next month. She introduced her topic at the World Economic Forum, and it created quite a buzz, you know. Feminists are still saying men need to get out of the way. And these are old debates, and I'm sure that, but nothing's been settled yet. So I'm sure that we can gain some wisdom and insight from our panel members here. So I've got some questions here that were, a whole group of us came up with the questions. So I hope they represent some of the things you've been thinking about. We'll start with, actually each of them, but we'll start with Shari. When did you first start to think of yourself as a leader, and why?
Well, good morning, everybody. It's really nice to be here with all of you, and I can't even see those in the back, so hopefully you can hear us all. I think that's a really interesting question, and I have to say last night I was working out and reading these questions and kind of getting my thoughts together, and then I started reading the book, Killing Kennedy. And in that book, it was so interesting because I didn't know a lot about JFK, and I learned that he never saw himself as a leader until he was forced in a situation of war that either they all survive or they don't. And I thought that's kind of interesting because I never really thought of myself as a leader. I was the youngest of 5. I had 2 brothers. older than I, and I lived in a neighborhood of boys. So it was a scrappy, competitive environment. And with that being said, I learned how to work hard, and if I had to do well, I had to really work for it. And I think that all pulls together with some of the qualities of leadership. Work ethic, and also the fact of my mother teaching me wherever you're planted, you leave it a better place. And so that just kind of formed who I was to move into as I grew. People would say to me, why don't you take this on? I think if you provide ideas, you do your follow-up, and you volunteer. I think those are things that really kind of developed me into leadership roles and made me more of a giving versus I want to come out and be a leader. So to me, it was that type of journey that brought me to where I am at this point.
Laura?
I think I was pretty young when I realized that other people thought of me as a leader. You know, as are many little girls, I think I was pretty bossy. Which of course you can get away with when you're 7, but not particularly when you're 17 or 47. And so, you know, I learned to move from bossy to assertive and persuasive. No, but even now I do find that I have to modify my bossy tendencies. And instead of telling people what I want them to do, I think being a leader means asking people the questions that they need to answer to figure out how to solve problems. And sort of so morphing from that, you know, I want you to do this and this is how I want you to do it, to this is the outcome we're looking for, let's figure out how to do this together.
Deb?
Well, I would say, looking back, I can see leadership development and tendencies starting in high school, but I really didn't start to think of myself as a leader till I was in business with about 5 employees and had an employee leave and kind of say, and I needed you to do this and this and this, and you didn't do it. And I went, ooh, I'm not leading. So that's really when I started focusing on leadership.
And was there any one particular person or a mentor that any of you would like to talk about, either male or female, that sort of helped you, mentor you along the way? Anybody?
Well, I can definitely answer that. My parents both were mentors in leadership. My dad started his own construction business when I was probably 11. And a couple years after that, my mom decided that rather than being the female laborer on my dad's job so they could, you know, they did some work that required some minority labor, rather than do that, she would start her own construction company to qualify as the minority labor. So she went back to school and learned construction. And so I really saw both of them lead their employees in really compassionate and wonderful ways. And so they were definitely mentors for me.
I can't emphasize enough the value of having mentors. Just if it's only, I was so fortunate to have people take an interest in me early in my career, you know, who would talk to me about what was going on, talk about situations, figure out what went well, what we could have done differently. And as I have grown in business, I have really tried very hard to make sure that I pass that along and try to bring other people along, and just to be a resource. And I think that that's really, really important and a very critical part of leadership. I think one of the hardest things about when you're the one who's being mentored, though, is not to beat yourself up. Because a lot of times, you know, we tend to put post-mortem situations in a way that, you know, that make us feel like we should or could have done something, you know, differently. And I think that's part of learning how to be a leader, but also, you know, and when I work with other people, I try very hard to make sure that we say, this is the outcome, and if we do it differently the next time, we might get a different outcome or we might not. but it's important to not beat yourself up over that too.
I agree that there's mentors through life, and we're so blessed for our mentors, and we really need to understand that responsibility that we have to be a mentor. But I think I've always looked to each and every situation as what can I gain from this, and sometimes your mentors could be you learn from a situation that was how you do not want to be. Mm-hmm. And there's so many opportunities of how you want to be, but I can say early on, it was my very first job. I learned some great things from this gentleman. I can tell you that when I was interviewed for my first job, I was asked if I was intending to have children. So going into the HR world, I knew this is an absolute no-no, but that was what the question was. Anyways, I digress. But I still can't believe I was asked that. At that point, we were changing in our business, and it was the first time it was a small company, we were growing, and as sometimes in growth happens, it goes a little uncontrolled, and we had to get handle on the financials. So we brought a CFO in, and we had a Saturday breakfast. So they were asking us to come to a Saturday breakfast, and we were giving of our time, you weren't paid for this, and the gentleman that owned the company did not pick up even for coffee. And that clicked in my mind. I will never do that. And hospitality and making people feel valued and welcomed, that was a lesson I learned. So you can learn from experiences if you take it as to, okay, note to self, right? This is how I don't want to be. And then, of course, you have great leader mentors that teach you communication styles. We were just talking, and I'm going to point you out, President Phipps, but she was speaking about communicating early in the morning and late at night with the kids on Facebook. And I thought, beautiful, because that shows you care. So you can pick along the way of what really works for you and what lifts people up and what maybe resonated with me as a way that didn't make me feel valued.
Thank you. That leads us into the next question here. A little bit more thoughtful. How has your leadership philosophy changed over time? What it means to be a woman in leadership? And then how has that affected your leadership style? How have you changed because of how your beliefs have changed? So, Deb?
I would say for me, when I first realized, a few years into business that I needed to be a leader, I embraced servant leadership to the point where if there was a job that needed to be done, I did it, probably to the detriment to our overall business. And what's changed is not that I think servant leadership isn't important, but I need to look at servant leadership as what is the best thing I can be doing for the company. And sometimes that means emptying the trash, but I shouldn't be doing that every day because there's probably better things that I can do to serve my employees by growing the company, making sure they have a stable place to work. So that really has changed, and sometimes that's hard for me to walk past something that I could do, but I really shouldn't do because I need to do something more important.
Laura?
I don't know that I would say so much that my philosophy has changed. I think leadership is about making things happen and about bringing about change. And it's about doing the right thing, which isn't always easy. And it's not always easy to know what the right thing is. So for me, humility and discernment play an incredibly important part in trying to figure out what the right thing is. So humility for me doesn't mean being a doormat, but it does mean exactly what you were saying, which is valuing other people and valuing other points of view. And discernment for me requires prayer. So I can't imagine sort of trying to figure out how to do stuff without praying about it. That's kind of how I view that. I'm sure that my style has changed over the years. I think that that's just maturity more than anything else. And as I've matured, I've become a much better listener. And I think that really does help you to be a better leader if you can be quiet and listen.
Sure.
I would agree that philosophy hasn't so much changed, but I think style, and I think that's part of maturing. For me, more about being able to face confrontation. I've always been pretty non-confrontational, tried to ease my way through every situation, and have really found that sometimes you have to go right at it. There's two things that, there's a leadership book, Leadership at Every Level by Noel Tichy, and that was an amazing book for me to read, and that was really about facing the tough issues and looking at examples of leaders that have done that. And I think, you know, life keeps changing, the business environment keeps changing. If you're going to survive for 90 years, for 100 years, you can't do it the same way, so you have to face the ugly truths that are out there. And I think I've been more willing to dive into those and face those.
Thank you. As we can see, there's a lot of wisdom in the room this morning. Okay, here's kind of a fun question on the difference in leading men versus women. Do you take a different approach when you are leading men versus leading women? So, Shari?
Oh, great.
I think she might have a story here.
No, I have to laugh at that question. Not that it's just, I mean, you think of so many different things, but women are not all the same, and men are not all the same. So to me, it's really about who it is that you're leading, because believe me, you can have a room full of women, and I would do it entirely different based upon the complexion of each and every woman. So I really believe it's more about not putting people in a corner and allowing them to come forth. And if you're encouraging that versus having them feel cornered and, okay, now here's a stereotypical type, but I think men are probably a little bit more upset if you corner them than perhaps a woman would be. And that's the only thing that I'll say as far as men, women, but that would be, I'm just really cautious about individuals and leading to their style.
Good insight. Laura?
I think that you're absolutely right, that you do adapt to whatever the audience is. I would say, however, that I don't think I lead men differently than I lead women. I try always to be my genuine and authentic self, warts and all, and, you know, and let my personality come through. And so I don't know that I treat men differently than women, although I was saying to these guys earlier, when I first went to Giant, I was the only girl in the room. And, you know, I do think that the discourse changed in the room because they had a woman present. I think that that they were more better behaved than they might have otherwise been. So I think I did change that level of discourse in some ways just by being there.
Deb?
And I was sitting at dinner with some of my male and female team members last night and was reviewing the questions, and so I thought, I'm going to ask them. Because I don't think I treat men and women differently, but let me ask. And we got some scrunched up faces for a few minutes, which worried me. But the consensus of the team was that they didn't see a difference in how I treated men versus women. Some of that may be, I was a computer science major, the only female computer science major at Messiah. So I spent a lot of time with men, and I think pretty comfortable leading both men and women because I, again, try to focus on the individual and what they need versus their gender or any other aspect of who they are.
Yeah, I think one thing we got out of all three answers here is that it's really important not to stereotype. Not all women are the same, not all men are the same, and a lot of the traditional presuppositions we have about either gender have evolved over the years, and so thank you for bringing that up. So my next question then, is there anything particular that men and women need to understand, let's say, about women who are leaders, or maybe women that have aspirations to, you know, run the show or whatever? Is there anything different? Like Laura changed the dynamic in the room when she showed up. What's different? What do people need to know?
I think it's hard to generalize about women who are leaders, just like it's hard to generalize about men who are leaders. I mean, we've already just said that. I know instinctively that I try to bring about consensus and help people work together. I don't know if that's because I'm a woman or if that's just because that's part of my DNA, that's part of who I am. I have to also, one thing though, I think that we as women tend to do is we tend to take things very personally. And one of the things that I have to continuously remind myself, and I know a lot of my female friends have to continuously remind myself, is that it's not personal. And not to take things personally, and that the person who's disagreeing with me is disagreeing with my point of view, not disagreeing with me as a human being. So I think as a woman, that's one of the things that for me is the hardest thing as a leader, is to sort of step back and say, I'm not going to take this personally, I'm not going to take this personally, I'm not going to take this personally.
Good lesson. Shari?
You said we had a little freedom here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to tweak it a bit. When I read that, I was really thinking about women, not just in leadership, but what would a leader want to know about women? And it's people in position of leadership and not. And I belong to a women's peer group, and I've gained so much from that. So I would encourage everybody, again, mentors and peers, and I can't speak enough about that. But I serve on the chamber board for Lancaster, and we had a task force that was focused on, do we need to set aside just for women executives? Or is the scope of concern the same, male versus women? And we met, we had these think tanks for several days, intermittently, and the interesting thing was, business is business, and business concerns are business concerns, no matter who you are. The overwhelming theme that came out from that is the work-life balance. And that's what I would say to be concerned of. Again, I hate to stereotype and say men aren't engaged in family or all women have children, or but on a broad, painting the broad stroke, I would say that is the overwhelming theme of, if you are a woman in a leadership position, people, be aware that there's give and take, that you have a great talent, but that talent may have time constraints. I heard stories this morning. I spoke to somebody that said, I don't think I can make it because I have to get my child on the bus at 7 a.m. We have board meetings at 7:15 and 7:30. Well, that kind of wipes out all those mothers that have to take care of their children. So to be cognizant of the fact of, now I have aging parents, so I've committed, to spend time to take care of my parents. I'm still taking care of the children. I'm starting a new business, and I love my volunteer. It's a lot of stretch, but all those factors make for somebody who has things to bring to the table, and I think sometimes we have to give a little bit on the time issue, and it's worth it for the value of the person that's there, and encourage that.
Thank you. Deb?
And that's really what I was going to pick up on that theme, as well as I think being a woman in leadership. I started my business when I had a 6-month-old. I was on maternity leave from IBM. My second child, at 4 weeks old, a client called and said, we need you to really come work on this proposal, and proposals are 14 to 16-hour days. And I said, well, she's allergic to formula, so either she comes or you get me 6 hours. So they said, she comes. So for 4 months, until she was 5 months old, we went to work together. Coming home literally sometimes for her middle of the night feeding. I mean, it was absolutely crazy, but what it gave me once I started having employees is a true sensitivity to, if I want this flexibility, if I want to be able to go to the elementary school halfway through the day, if I want to do these things, I'd like my employees to be able to, and then to give grace to those when you're on the phone with someone and you hear something in the background. You know what? That's life these days. So men and women, to really try to give grace to, I'd like you to come to this dinner that we have in the evening, but if you have a family commitment, no matter what it is, I understand that comes first, really. I think men and women need to recognize that we need to give each other grace to balance our entire lives, because there's lots of things more important than what's going on at work.
These are powerful messages here. Powerful. Laura, did you want to add?
Yeah, no, I
anything?
just, I completely concur with what you're saying. And one of the things that, this kind of question about do you treat men and women differently? I think one of the things that I was thinking about was you never really tried to act like a guy. And I never tried to pretend that I didn't have responsibilities outside of work, because I've always had responsibilities out of work. My daughter was born while I was in law school. So, I've always had responsibilities outside of work. That, and to your, to your good point, you have to recognize the person for who they are and their whole person. And that's part of being a leader too, is to say, I get this. Yeah.
Yeah, good comments here. I'm sure we've heard lots of good advice already. I mean, lots of nuggets of wisdom and insight here on leadership. But before we go to a question and answer period, I'm going to ask each woman here, is there one suggestion, one piece of advice you would give to our young people here today? Something that they should focus on, or something they might want to work on their own personal development if they see leadership in their futures. So men or women. Shari?
My suggestion would be to stretch yourself, to go outside your comfort zone, to try new things. Sometimes the biggest lessons that I've learned are not in my workplace, but because I have gone and volunteered or served on a board or got involved in an organization, and then it broadens you and stretches you in a different way. Doing things, putting your hand up if somebody's asking you, okay, we need this done at work, and it may not be exactly your bailiwick. And when I started in business, when they had said to me, I want you to do sales, my teeth chattered. I had to chew ice because my teeth chattered. I was so afraid to go and present. And then I kind of overcame that, and then I couldn't speak in front of groups. Well, here I am, so I guess I overcame that. But if I would have feared and stopped, then I wouldn't have been able to become who I think God had intended me to be. And those challenges are gifts, but you have to accept the gift, and you have to open the gift, and you have to work through it. So I would you always receive more when you give. And I think volunteering is a great thing, or just raising your hand to try something different.
Laura?
I completely agree. I mean, my answer is volunteer. Find something that interests you, find a group that interests you. If it's an organization, like a chamber, or, that works through committees, go be on a committee. And if you really like it, volunteer to chair that committee. And then if you really like that, volunteer to be on the board. And really, that's how you develop leadership skills, by really jumping in with both feet and doing stuff. And it requires commitment of time, requires commitment of talent. At some point it will require a commitment of money. Not necessarily that you have to give it yourself, but you need to find it, and that's an important part of it. Don't think that it's not, but nevertheless, jump in and do stuff.
I would say one of the things that really helped me is went through an exercise in a coaching program that said ask 10 people that you know fairly closely what your greatest skills are, and then consolidate those responses and kind of pick out themes. And that really helped me see myself in a different way and pick out things that I could focus on as strengths and really look for opportunities to use those both in business and volunteering. The one caution I would have in volunteering for those that might be younger is please be careful. I didn't really volunteer significantly until my kids were at a place that I could do that, because between business and raising a family, that was pretty much all I did, except volunteered at church because they were there already. So, I mean, I think sometimes we try to do too much, and I've had women say, I tried to do this and I tried to do this, like, you look at some of us and all the things we're involved in, well, we may be in different places in life than other people, so I just want to caution that as well, because it can be absolutely crazy if you're trying to do what we're doing now when you're in a different place in life.
Thank you. This is great advice. It just warms my heart because my personal New Year's resolution this year is to do hard things. Okay, to get myself out of my comfort zone. So we never get too old to keep challenging ourselves or to keep looking for something new. And to start when you're young, take the little steps. And this is great to hear it from these people with their experience in the corporate world, the volunteer world, church, and your own business, entrepreneurship. These women have been leaders in all different walks of life. And we've learned a lot this morning. We have just a few minutes here before we wrap up, and we've got time for some questions. You can ask a question to any particular panel member or to all three. Anyone here have questions? Or okay, you want to stand up, introduce yourself, and ask your question?
My name is Dwayne Seilenberger, and my wife is a principal.
Okay.
She is a leader. I think I'm also a leader. I started my own accounting firm 2 years ago. And my wife filed for divorce in May. It's almost a year. So mine comes with that kind of a background. And I wrote down 6 questions.
Oh my God.
We'll start with one. What's
So
the
we
most?
talked about this.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start with just the one. Okay.
Okay.
So here, how do you respond to the church bulletin that says, the women's Bible study meets Tuesday and Thursday at 10:30, childcare provided. Sign up sheet available at Patty's Cupcake Bake Monday at 2.
The point being that maybe all women's stuff is during the day so that it's not available to working women?
That's right.
Yeah, have you felt that because you're a working woman, maybe you've been excluded from, like maybe in the church or?
And I'm truly passionate about this. I think that I go to a great church that is very open to women who work. However, I think there are some holes in our churches where, I went to Sunday school class with women who had their own businesses. I never knew. They never felt comfortable talking about what they were doing because we talked about kids and mom stuff and whatever. So we have intentionally, a group of my great working women friends and I developed Christian Business Women's Fellowship to really focus some fellowship and mentoring and encouragement around women who are Christians who work outside the home. So we are working on getting groups started in Lancaster and York as well. We've got connections here in Harrisburg to truly try to form connections between women who work outside the home who want a Christian fellowship, and then also to reach their workplaces for Christ.
Thank you.
Now, I actually think that's a great question. It brings up an interesting thing because especially as a young mother, I remember those feelings of, boy, there seems to be a divide here. And I didn't really understand why it had to be that way, but that is interesting. And I don't know that I really felt a lack because I was able to have support groups and, people. I get together with my college girlfriends. I just did it Saturday. So you have Christian women in business that we still get together. So I think I didn't really feel a lack because of that, but I think it's a very interesting point. My church is very big and there's all kinds of opportunities for women, day, night, morning, evening, whatever. So I haven't really felt that, but I think it brings up a great question of being cognizant of that fact. Yeah. Working women versus stay-at-home working women.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing over the years, maybe a generation ago, there was a lot more divide and it was an either or, and maybe some churches are still stuck in that. But I think now it's more of I'm a stay-at-home mom for one season of my life and then I work for another season. And we realize that we can do it all, but not all at once. And there are different seasons of life. And if we have empathy for those in other seasons rather than judgment against people, try to build bridges instead of keep this generation-long divide going. But my church also has the morning and the evening activities, and all women are affirmed. And it's nice to see that the world is moving beyond that, and that we can encourage and come alongside people who are in different seasons of life, and that can be part of mentoring and part of how you share your gifts too. So, any other questions here before we wrap up? So, okay, hi.
My name's Cody Warner, and I'm one of the members of the steering committee. And I was wondering, my wife is one of those go-getters like y'all. And she's currently in grad school, and she does some volunteering, and she has a full-time job. And we'd in the next 5 years like to start a family. So, and like that's something she's very passionate about is her family life, and then her work life. So I was just wondering if you have any sort of like litmus tests that you used in your own life to think, okay, am I doing too much now? Am I spreading myself too thin, or should I pursue more, pursue less? Just that, like, so that she and I can talk about that, so we can, be healthy.
Well, let me start that. And I could not ever do the things that I do without my husband, who has been my rock for 27 years. So, I guess the first thing that I would say is focus on your marriage, because that's really the most important thing that you can possibly do for either of you, is make sure that you've got a strong marriage. There is no litmus test, because all of our situations are different. And you do get to a point in your life, and I can remember the time that I was walking up 2nd Street. We had an exchange student. My son was playing both baseball and soccer. My daughter was playing softball. They were both doing music lessons. I was working full-time. He was working full-time. We were at some corporate function at the Harrisburg Hilton, and we were walking back to my car at Pine Street, and I can remember yelling at the poor man as we were walking up 2nd Street saying, "We're never going to do this again. We're never going to do this again." So there does come a point where, you kind of say, okay, I'm overloaded. I think the hardest thing that we as women have to do is learn to say no. We have a terrible, terrible time saying no. And we were talking about that when we were talking about our volunteer work and all of that other kind of stuff. I will tell you, I have said no to more things than I've said yes to. Although learning to say yes to the right things is also critically important. And again, that requires discernment, and discernment requires prayer.
Deb?
One of the things I learned from my We Fit is balance is about a strong core. And to me that means defining your family's core values and then making the decision today about what the most important priority is. And it's not exactly achieving balance and then, okay, you're there. It's today I have a sick kid, so suddenly my priority is family and that piece of my core. Tomorrow I may have a very important client presentation and I don't see my kids for 12 hours because that happens to be the balance for today. And so I think that especially women think, I'm going to get balanced and then I'm going to be good. Well, guess what? That doesn't happen. So it's every day figuring out, and sometimes moment by moment figuring out what the priority is, and then really wholeheartedly following that priority. And that means sometimes at the last minute you're canceling things, and that's okay. If people don't understand that, oh well.
Shari?
Okay, Cody, right?
Yeah.
You're starting with a 4.0. So just by asking these questions and talking about it, I think sets for a good track history of success, because obviously you care about her and her fulfillment, and as we said, we want to do a lot in life. We may not be able to do it at the same time, but if there is that communication and that caring and that willingness to give and take, I think you're on the right track. So.
And remember, Cody, there is no perfect time to have a kid. Believe me, the first one just shows up. I think the Bible says, though we make the plan. But just to be aware, I think we've heard some wonderful advice here, good biblical advice. And once again, I just want to emphasize how important it is to stick to your core values. And I just love that these women put their families first, marriage, children, and then business. Business, that's maybe where you get your affirmation. You don't get your affirmation, at home keeping chocolate donuts off your fingers. You go out, you dress nice, you feel good, and but if your home life is not solid, and you're not solid in your prayer life with the Lord and your discernment, then whatever you accomplish in the business world is not going to matter in the end. And so I just want to thank these women for giving us a biblical worldview, a whole life view, and for sharing their experiences here. So let's give them a hand. President of Messiah College, and because of the strong women in leadership at Messiah, that's one big reason why I'm here.
Throughout the journey, I want to thank my colleague, Connie Ostwald. She did a great job, and it does take a skill to keep a conversation going and to facilitate a panel so well, so thank you, Connie. I'm very grateful to the panel. Thank you for your honesty, your humor, which is really an important part of being able to maintain, I think, a leadership role, and your wisdom and your insights, and your example to all of us. I want to especially thank Giant for being our corporate sponsor and for really being just a wonderful, wonderful organization in our community. You're committed to serving your customers so well, and we see that. Every day, all of us who are your customers, but we also see your commitment to being wonderful corporate citizens and the kind of influence you have in our community and the kind of work that you're doing to really reach out and make a difference. So thank you for your support of this event today and for your example. Alums in the room, we are always so delighted to have you in this context and all contexts. You really are. I don't like to use the product language, but because I'm with business folks and not just with the Faculty of Humanities, I can say that. You are our wonderful, wonderful testimony to the outcomes of a Messiah College education. And we're so proud of the way that you're living out your values each and every day in the way that you're serving your organizations, your companies, but also your communities and your churches. Want to just invite all of you alums and friends in the room, friends from Giant and others, to come to Messiah and visit us on any occasion. If it's a case of wanting to have a picnic along the Yellow Breeches in the beautiful springtime, we'd love to have you there just to enjoy the environment. We are thrilled to have opened the High Center for Worship and the Performing Arts. If you haven't been to our campus in a while, we really invite you to come and enjoy a concert or a play in that wonderful facility, or a lecture. In just a few weeks, Lema Bowie, who won the Nobel Peace Prize a few years ago and was really responsible for leading the movement for women's equality in Liberia, will be speaking. So just know that we do think hospitality should be a core value of Messiah College, and we seek to live that out. So you're always welcome to be a part of our work there, and we so appreciate all of you who participate with us in not only attending events, but in having our interns, and certainly in hiring our graduates. So thank you so much for your presence today. And I think that there is just so much wisdom shared, but for all of us, what we have to remember, I think, in leadership is that leadership is really a very profound and very sacred calling, and we have to steward our gifts carefully and thoughtfully, and use those gifts in service to our organizations, but in service broadly to others. And so I'm very thankful to the panel for sharing those kinds of thoughts with us, and for all of us to be reminded that as we lead, we do have a responsibility to mentor others, and as I think Laura said so well, and to bring others along with us. And so if you're a senior here, a student here is a senior, maybe it's that first year student that you can be a mentor to. For many of us, It's other contexts in which we lead and serve, but we have a responsibility to bring others with us. So thank you for being here. Hope to see you again at a breakfast. And I would also like to just acknowledge the steering committee one last time, and Dan, your leadership and your work, and then also our wonderful folks in the alumni office. So to Jay and to Brittany and Michelle, thanks for all the work you do. Have a great day, everyone.